How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is PSReady, my channel all about PlayStation. In today's video, I've got 3 topics for you guys. The first one is that it is time to buy a PlayStation 5. Whatever reason there is you haven't upgraded, I am going to convince you in this video to pick one up. Second on the list, Hideaki Nishino and Herman Hulst, the new CEOs of Sony, have sent out a joint letter that gives us a look into their future. And third, we're going to cover 3 franchises that Sony desperately needs to bring back. First up, let's talk about why it's time for you to buy a PlayStation 5. We know the stats. 50% of the people who are on PS4 or PS4 Pro have not upgraded, and that's fine because, you know, the PS5 is technically outselling the PlayStation 4, so new people are coming in, which is exactly what we want. But for you hardcore gamers out there, you guys who love PlayStation, I think you're sleeping on one of the best consoles Sony's ever made, and I have a whole list here to tell you why. The first thing we're going to cover is price. So for a long time, the launch buyers of the PlayStation 5, specifically the digital version, have had a little bit of a price advantage. When the console came out in 2020, it was $400 for the digital version and it was $500 for the PS5 with the disc drive. That makes sense that there was a $100 difference because there was a huge difference in price between the Series X and S, and Sony wanted to capitalize on that and not look like assholes for charging a ton of money for the digital edition of the console. But the disc drive is not a $100 attachment, right? Like, they were definitely losing money on the PlayStation 5. Then later on, they even raised the price pretty much all over the world, basically everywhere except the United States. Both consoles, the digital and physical versions, got price increases that equated to around 50 to 60 bucks depending on where you were in the world. Now, the United States eventually caught up with that because when they released the PS5 Slim, they increased the price of the digital model to around 450 bucks, and they kept the disc model at 500, and you also got a game with it, which was pretty cool. But now we finally have a discount on the PlayStation 5 thanks to the Days of Play sale, and it's a $50 discount. So if you were someone who skipped out on the digital one at launch and then you were kind of staying away because they increased the price of it, you can now get it for that $399 price, which is excellent. And if you're someone who wants a disc model because you have a bunch of PS4 discs ready to go, you can save 50 bucks and get it for the regular price of the digital model. So that's like a free upgrade really over the digital model. So that's why whether you want the digital or physical, I'd say just take the savings on the physical and get that regardless, because theoretically you were already prepared to spend 450 bucks and now you're getting a free upgrade. And I have to point out that that disc drive that you can buy for the digital model that you can like attach to the side, that thing is never in stock. So if you're planning on ever getting a disc drive, get it while it's on sale now with the disc drive already attached, because again, it's a free upgrade. And sticking with price, the game selection you have on this console right now at great prices is amazing. So there's a few different things we got to cover. First of all, because of the Days of Play sale, pretty much every game is on sale on the PlayStation Store. I mentioned in my last video that I already own Gran Turismo 7 digitally, but I wanted to get a physical disc just because I love the game so much. I went on Best Buy yesterday and saw that the physical version of GT7 was 40 bucks. I was able to get it in 15 minutes with free delivery because my wife has Dash Pass through work, and you can use DoorDash to get stuff from Best Buy now. Ray told me about this last week and I was like, there's no way. And then I went on there's a whole Best Buy storefront, and I was able to get this for 40 bucks plus tax delivered to my house in 15 minutes. You really can't beat that deal. Also, you can get The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered for as low as $20. You can get The Last of Us Part 1 for as low as $30, which is crazy. Every game is on sale, whether you're talking Elden Ring or going all the way down to launch titles like Returnal or Demon's Souls. Any game that you could pick up for the PlayStation 5 is on sale right now. Even Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is down to 45 bucks, which is a great price for one of my favorite games of this year. So if you upgrade now, you're getting great prices across the board there, but you can also capitalize on extra bonuses for PlayStation Plus through Days of Play. No matter what tier you get, Essential, Extra, or Premium, you get extra games this month. Obviously, you get the most extra games, including a bunch of great PSVR 2 games with PS Plus Premium, but Extra adds in extra games. But even Essential kept the game from last month and added a couple on top of the 3 games we normally get. So you can get a bunch of free games with your PS Plus subscription that you're definitely going to need with your console to even use online features. So no matter what tier you grab, I think you're sitting pretty because you're going to get extra games. And if you're one of these people who has a PS4 and just hasn't upgraded to the PlayStation 5 yet, I would definitely recommend grabbing PS Plus Extra. Don't get a full year, get a few months, see if you actually use the library of games that come with it. But there are a lot of first-party PS5 games in there, like Returnal, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, Demon's Souls is in there, I'm pretty sure. You can get the director's cut of Ghost of Tsushima and Death Stranding. That's like enough games to last you through the rest of the year, if not more. And you can just play them until you're done and then cancel your extra subscription and just downgrade to Essential Essential, and then you can collect your free games every month that you get to keep as long as you're subscribed to PS Plus. And on top of that, if you're someone who's been on PS4, you have been rewarded for staying there this generation. There's no denying it. I mean, every big game, whether you're talking Horizon Forbidden West or God of War Ragnarok, they have all come to the PlayStation 4. There are only a few standout games that have come to the PlayStation 5, but I'm sure you've noticed this year that that list is growing quickly. Final Fantasy 16, Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth. The killer app, Stellar Blade, that is PS5 only, and it's one of the best-selling games, if not the best-selling game of the month that came out. People are absolutely loving it, like my friend Dustin over at Sacred Symbols. He's like the connoisseur, the master of sexy women games. He loves playing those. He's been telling me how great Stellar Blade is. You can't play that on the PlayStation 4, and new games like Monster Hunter Wilds, Silent Hill 2 Remake, they all are only coming to the PlayStation 5. So your time is up. It's time to upgrade before people start wanting to buy this console en masse because they can only play new games on that console. And if you wait, you're not going to get the sale price. I'm sure they'll do some bundles or something towards the end of the year, but going by the history of the PlayStation console, that's all they do. They keep the price of the console the same, maybe $500 or a little bit more, and then you get a free game like Spider-Man 2, Call of Duty, Horizon. Any of those big first-party games have been packed in with the PlayStation 5, but you're not really saving all that much money because a lot of those games can be bought cheaper than they would be in the bundle price, or they'll eventually end up on PS Plus Extra anyway. So I would say no matter what your situation is, from a pure cost-saving games buying perspective, now is the time to buy a PlayStation 5. The next reason is because the hardware is just great. So I mentioned this before, I keep my original PS5 behind my TV on a shelf because I'm doing a no console, no wire, no nothing thing with that because it's a big TV and I use it mostly as a screening room. Down here, I have a TV with a TV cabinet. I couldn't care less about the cord situation. I have everything plugged into it, like my Series X, which I've used 3 times since I bought it, so it was a huge waste of money. But because I've been playing so much Gran Turismo 7, I moved my PS5 Slim to my desk. And, you know, it doesn't look great, but I'd argue the original PS5 doesn't look great. And I think it was worth the savings in size to get it to this form factor because it fits perfectly on a desk. I've got it sitting vertically right there. I've got all my charging cables plugged in. I've got my headphone stand with my Pulse Elites. I've got it hooked up to my OLED monitor. And of course, the whole reason I wanted to move it to my desk was so I could use my Logitech G923 racing wheel with Gran Turismo. And man, is that an excellent experience. I am definitely breaking out the PSVR 2 to play in first person for real with a racing wheel. I can't imagine how much fun that's going to be later tonight. Basically, all of that is to say I've been using the PS5 Slim a lot more than my original PS5 lately, and something I've noticed is that even though the PS5 is by no means a loud console, it's pretty virtually silent, I've noticed the fans ticking up in volume, like audible volume over the past year with these mainline PS5 games that don't have cross-gen ports. That is not the case with the PS5 Slim. I know the fans are similar, they're obviously in similar placements, but the fans in the PS5 Slim are quiet. They're basically silent, and the only time I ever actually hear noise coming out of that thing is when I take a game out, put a game in, and then the game revs up. But as we all know, you have to transfer every game to your SSD in the first place, so, you know, you only hear the disc rev up when it's checking your license to make sure you can play the game. And sticking with hardware, the peripheral game has improved immensely with the PS5 since launch. Back when it came out, basically all you could get was a charging stand, an extra DualSense, the Pulse Original headset, which is not great, and a media remote. Now you have tons of options, like the PSVR 2, which is on sale for $100 off, and I think is totally worth it for that price. You have the Pulse Elite headset, which is the best PlayStation headset I've ever used. I have the Explorer. I don't think that's worth grabbing. It's cool having gaming earbuds that connect directly to your PlayStation 5 and can also connect to your phone. The problem is they don't sound great, the battery life is terrible, and they hurt after a while because they're so damn big and so damn heavy in your ears. They fall out as well, like if you're talking using the microphone, they pop out all the time, so I don't think the Explorer is worth it, but the Elite is comfortable, it's premium, it sounds amazing, and it connects both to your PS5 with the link adapter, and it can connect to your phone so you can use YouTube at the same time. So while I was grinding out the S2 race, which I have not beaten yet after 2.5 hours, I will be beating it tonight, I had some YouTube videos playing in the background, and that was just a nice premium experience sitting at my desk last night. So your peripheral game is very strong. I highly recommend picking up a DualSense Edge. It is a little expensive at $200, but as someone who has owned both versions of the Xbox Elite controller and has a lot of DualSenses, I move that DualSense Edge everywhere. I use it with my PC, I use it with my PS5 upstairs, I use it with my PS5 down here. It's just much better feeling in the hand. It's got a little bit more weight to it. Of course, the battery life sucks, especially if you're playing GT7, because because the adaptive triggers are going crazy, the haptic feedback's going crazy, all of that drains the battery, but I have the charging cable sitting right there ready to go because it's 9 feet long and my PS5 is right in front of me, so it hasn't really been a problem. I think that thing is well worth the price of $200 and it's never gone on sale, so you're not going to get buyer's remorse if you pick it up for full price right now. It's not like it's going to go on sale in a month for like $125 or something like that, because as we've heard from Sony's business data calls that they did over the past couple of weeks, people are buying peripherals like crazy. They have virtually no reason to drop the price whatsoever. And yeah, this is just a bonus. I know a lot of people are waiting for the PS5 Pro, but at the price of $450, I don't think it's worth waiting. You've got basically the entire summer where games don't traditionally come out at a rapid pace. There's a ton of stuff in the backlog to take advantage of, and most of those games already run at 60 FPS at high resolution, so I don't think you're going to get that noticeable of an upgrade with the PS5 Pro. My pro move here would be to buy the PS5 Slim right now and wait for some sales on the PS5 Pro, because I think that thing's going to be a little bit of a niche console for people who did upgrade at launch like I did and want to stick with that 60 FPS high resolution experience that I've been enjoying for the first half of the generation. But you know, if you're just someone who hasn't upgraded yet, you're obviously not super into the idea of being on the bleeding edge of tech anyway, so I don't think you're in the market for a PS5 Pro in the first place. So because of all of those reasons, now is the time to buy a PlayStation 5. Let me know if I convince you down in the comments below. That brings us to the second news story here, which is this letter that was sent out to all of the employees of Sony by the new incoming CEOs, Hideaki Nishino and of course Herman Hulst. I'm not going to read you the whole thing. I just found some interesting tidbits in there that I thought were worth talking about, because I think the strategy they have going forward is one of the best that they've had, arguably since the PS3 generation. The first thing they said is it's never been more important for the leadership at Sony to step back, review their business holistically, and move forward with a new structure designed to bring out the best in the organization and deliver increasingly incredible experiences. That seems like a direct response to me to the Jim Ryan strategy, which we all know was pretty much an abysmal failure. I know on the hardware side, he did some commendable stuff, getting the PS5 out in 2020 and making sure that eventually people were able to buy them, but he does have a lot of failures under his belt, like this whole live service initiative where they wanted like 11 live service games on the PlayStation 5 from Sony by the 2025, which like obviously is not happening. The only two that really made it out are arguably Helldivers 2, and the only three that I would say made it out in that time frame would be Gran Turismo 7, that is a light live service, Helldivers 2, another light live service, and then Concord, which I'm just gonna be honest, looks not great at all to me. So they obviously took a big hit there, and the strategy going forward is that Nishino is going to be the hardware guy. He's gonna focus on the PlayStation, the Portal, the DualSense Edge, anything hardware related is going to be under his purview. He's gonna be making sure that he's setting up Herman Hulst, who's running all the studios and the TV and the movie side of things, with the best hardware possible so that he can just get down, put his head down, and make some freaking games. And I really do like Herman Hulst. I know people like to meme that he just loves Horizon too much, but I get it. Horizon is an important franchise for Sony. It's kind of like those new Planet of the Apes movies where they make billions of dollars, but nobody talks about them despite the fact that they're really good. I feel like that's very comparable to how Horizon is done, where even though it comes out up against Zelda and then it comes out up against Elden Ring, it still manages to sell millions and millions of copies. It's got a lot of fans. Every time I say I'm not a big Horizon fan, I see you in the comments saying how much you love it. So it's good to have a more, for lack of a better word, generic franchise that can capture new audiences and people who aren't hardcore gamers like us. They clearly have that with Horizon, so I see why they put such a big focus on it. But beyond the fact that this guy's been studio director for a long time and has put out a lot of great games since he took over for Shuhei Yoshida, he's also worked on the Killzone franchise, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, but that's one of Sony's best franchises. I think he's a great dude to really oversee all of the studio stuff because he came up throughout the studios. Nishino, on the other hand, came up through the hardware side of things, so having two CEOs is really important. I don't think the live service push is done by any means at Sony, but there's also a push from Herman Hulst. He's mentioned it multiple times that they want to make these single player open world games that everyone absolutely loves, and I fully believe in them. They've got a lot of great studios working on games right now, and the main ones like Ghost of Tsushima's developer Sucker Punch, God of War's developer Santa Monica Studio, and of course Naughty Dog, they're all working on single player stuff. They've all moved away from multiplayer. The only one working on a live service from the first party is Bend, and Sony obviously likes what they're doing because they just invested an extra $200 million into their game. And that brings us to the third news story, which is kind of a small reaction to me to the whole like Concord situation where the game just doesn't look very good. So a lot of people were kind of questioning why Sony invested in this game in the first place, but I did a little bit more research, and it turns out when Sony bought Firewalk Studios, the game was already 5 years in development, and since it's coming out this summer, they basically only had to fund like the last year of the game, which was mostly the polish, I'm assuming, and getting the post-launch content ready to go. So for them, it's a low-risk situation. They like the idea of a hero shooter. They like the idea of the Bungie pedigree. I would argue that, you know, they probably should have not bought the studio now that they have Bungie, since they like have the version of the game that they're trying to rip off kind of with Concord by already owning Destiny 2, but that's a minor misstep there. Beyond all that, I just don't think the game looks very good. I don't think any of the characters are visually striking. It looks like Guardians of the Galaxy at home. I've never really been into hero shooters like Overwatch, and this one isn't moving the needle for me, and it's crazy considering Sony has 3 franchises just sitting there that could totally fill their first-person shooter void completely easily with reboots. Killzone is the one I'm least interested in coming back because as much as I love it, I've played every game in the franchise. I played Killzone 1, 2, and 3 on PS2 and PS3, and I played Killzone Shadowfall on PS4. I played Killzone Mercenary on the PlayStation Vita, and Killzone Liberation has to be one of my most played PlayStation portable games ever made. I love the multiplayer in that game. But the one thing it never really had was a great story. I think the idea of the Helghast is cool. They're obviously the title character. They're on the cover of the box, but they're the villain of the story. And they kind of mess with that with Shadowfall by having like a character who was a good Helgen character, but like it never really had a great story. So now is the perfect time to reboot it and really get the story in order. But the game I really want to come back is Resistance. Resistance 1, it's a little rough. It's a very early PS3 first-person shooter. I think it's one of the only first-person shooters on the PS3 where you got to use the R2 to shoot with the DualShock, which was not great because it was curved down, and it's like you couldn't even aim down the sights. It was just a bad experience overall. But I put 40 to 50 hours into the multiplayer of Resistance 2. I love the story. Nathan Grayson was such an awesome character. The teaser at the end was great. And then they kind of abandoned that plotline for Resistance 3, but out of the 3 games, I think that was the best first-person shooter campaign that Sony may have ever put out. It was really cool. It was like a road trip game where you traveled on a train across the United States. I don't know why it didn't sell all that well, but in my eyes, that's the best Resistance game, and Resistance is just a cool franchise overall. It's very iconic in the PlayStation lexicon. You could get that Doom sort of feeling out of it. Insomniac hasn't made a first-person shooter in a long time, so you could give it to a new studio. There's infinite possibilities with Resistance that I think they need to take advantage of. But the third option here, SOCOM, is the one that's just so obvious. It's like you see games like Rainbow Six Siege totally taking off. There's like infinite possibilities with the multiplayer you could do there. You see games like Call of Duty raking in the money, and now Xbox owns Call of Duty. You have a military franchise that people are nostalgic for sitting right there, and the reason it went away is Sony's fault. SOCOM 4 came out right before the whole PSN outage. It was a very online-centric game, so no one bought it, and then by the time the online servers came back on, they didn't do any marketing for it, so it just died on the vine. And then they made them make a Vita game, which was called Unit 13. It was extremely generic, but I thought it was really fun, and after that, they closed down the studio. So at this point, the series has been dormant long enough where you can not only bring back people who are nostalgic for it with a new entry, you could also bring in new people who will be told by people like us who played SOCOM on the PSP and the PS2 growing up how awesome it was back in the day, because we totally have rose-colored glasses about the game. So even as great as it was, we probably think it's even better than it was back in the day. Anyway, guys, that's all I've got for you today in today's video. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on.